Our country is being stolen from us. And that's not just rhetoric. Our country is being stolen from us. Our schools, our neighborhoods, our places of business, our economy, our government, our sovereignty, our country is being taken from us. It was ours at one point. It belonged to our ancestors, and now it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to foreigners. It belongs to the elite who hate us. Our country is being taken. And do not underestimate what that means, in particular when it comes to this agenda. They would have it, if they could, that all of your children would be indoctrinated with trans and gay ideology. Think about a person like James Younger, the 8-year-old in Texas, who is being forced by his mother under the order of a court to undergo chemical castration with hormone replacement therapy to prevent him from going into puberty. These are the kinds of horror shows, tragedies, the abominations that are occurring. People are performing ghastly surgeries on children and on adults too, where they're cutting things off here and sewing them on over there and putting things inside out and all over the place. This is being taught to our children. It's being done to our children. It's being done to our families. It's being done to our country. And at what point are conservatives, people that fear God and fear God alone, at what point are the good and decent and Christian conservative people of this country going to stand up and say, that's enough? And not ask respectful questions, and not have a civil debate, and not be polite, but to say that this cannot go forward one more inch. The conservative movement is broadly Christian, and you can't find a lot of devout Christians, social conservatives, or anybody that believes anything remotely like the country or like the base within the leadership of the party. That's why you get stuff like this. We're talking about sick stuff. And I'm not going to be respectful of what they're up to. I'm not going to be respectful of their anti-God, anti-family, anti-human, anti-conservative agenda. We have to say no not just to trans kids in girl sports, and not just no to the government forcibly transitioning children. We have to say no to transitioning, period. And say no to trans, period. You cannot transition. You cannot transition to other genders. We have to say no to homosexuality. We have to say no to lesbians. We have to say no to the whole thing. What they're pushing is something that is the antithesis of a traditional Christian moral worldview, with sexual morality and the family in particular. You either believe in the family with a mother and a father, a husband and a wife, or you believe in anything goes. You believe that the only thing that matters in a marriage, in a relationship, or in anything else for that matter, is an individual's preference. And it's about those underlying foundational moral principles. You either have one or you have the other, because there is no middle ground. There's no compromise. There is no meet me in the middle between families with biological men and women getting married and having kids, and whatever the hell this is. People are willing to put up, they're willing to tolerate some of this. They were willing to say maybe, okay, people want to get married, that doesn't have anything to do with me. Fast forward 15 years and the government is telling people, we'll transition your children and cut their penises off and put them on hormone replacement therapy and not tell their parents, and you have to be okay with that or you go to jail. Well, you're pushing the limits of people's tolerance. People have their limits, and they're being pushed right now. And the person who's going to stand up and say that when they run for office, that person, I think, is going to be a very popular politician. It's a question of what we want our party to be. Do we want to be the party of the Chamber of Commerce and Rick Grinnell, the gay director of national intelligence? Do we want it to be the party of OnlyFans and the party of corporate tax cuts and the party of American enterprise? Or do we want it to be the party of the Christian, decent, middle-class people of America between the coasts? That's the question. Conservatives are willing to say, for example, well, we draw the line at drag queens in schools, but they will not draw the line on transgender even. They will not draw the line on, like, contraception and sex education for kids. Well, once it's gotten so bad so offensive that even somebody that's apathetic would find something wrong with it, then they're going to speak out. But everything that leads to that point, they have no moral courage to oppose it. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's easy to condemn the horns and the pitchfork. It's not easy to condemn the rainbow flag and two people that just love each other. It's not easy to do that. That's why conservatives now tolerate and support homosexuality, transgenderism, and a number of other social ills, because they say, even though it's immoral, according to your own religion, if you're a Christian, they say, if it doesn't hurt somebody else, if I'm not forced to partake in it, then it's okay. But if you stand against evil, you have to stand against evil all the time. It doesn't just end at transgender bathrooms or girls' locker rooms. All of it has to go. And not just trans, but gay too. And not just trans and gay, but you know what else? Promiscuity, abortion, feminism. It all has to go. Because if you take our worldview through to its logical conclusion, why can't transgender athletes compete in the girls' sports? Because people can't transition. And they can't transition because God made them a certain way, and God made them different. And the differences are real and significant, and they matter. And if the differences matter, then they have to be treated differently. They have different roles in society. And so if women are born with a reproductive apparatus, and insofar as we know that's the only way to continue the human population, they have to be making the babies. And if they're making the babies and they have a certain disposition to raise them, they've got to raise them too. And that's a full-time job. What they're doing is marginalizing normal Christian people. They're marginalizing anybody that is not totally insane. What this is going to lead to is more suicidal people, kids and adults. This is going to lead to more dysfunction, more confusion, more misery, more sadness, more angst, more anxiety, mental illness, slavery, oppression. That's what all of this leads to. That's the end stage of all of it. The family is the enemy of the New World Order. The New World Order wants to undermine traditional gender roles and the traditional family, because they don't want you raising your kids. They don't want you serving your husband and your wife and your God and your children. They want you serving them. I do not think that transgender and transsexual should be normalized. I think it's morally wrong. I think it is morally bankrupt. You cannot transition from one gender to another. You can't do that. You are born a gender and you die that gender. And there's no crossing over. You can put on a wig, you can put on lipstick, you can put on a dress. It doesn't make you a woman. And we should not have it in our society. We shouldn't have it on television. We shouldn't have it in elected office. And we should be passing laws to prevent this. And the same goes for homosexuality. And the same goes for abortion. These things are wrong. And we shouldn't have them in our society. They shouldn't be glorified. We should not get too comfortable with them. They should not be normalized. In fact, they should be marginalized, and people should see them as what they are, which is gravely evil and disordered and misguided. Men and women and their complementarity in a marriage is the foundation of a family, and the family is the foundation of a civilization. If you are against the family, if you're against marriage, if you're against men and women and their complementarity.
And Ben Shapiro in LA, and he said the most Ben Shapiro thing to me ever. And his little, how he talks.
Give me a Ben Shapiro impression. Come on.
I'm gonna try, but he was like, you know, the conservatives haven't cared about gays since like 1990, right? Like so quickly, like, and he shook his head. He did one of those things, like, we don't care anymore, right?
Then you are not a conservative. So stop calling yourself one. Call yourself a liberal. Call yourself a Democrat. But please see yourself out, because there's nothing conservative about you. The foundation of the civilization is the family. And this much is obvious. Where do children come from? They don't come from factories. They don't come from the government. They don't come from corporations. They don't come from farms. They come from the womb of women. And they come from men and women illicitly within marriage, having sex. That's the only way that they're created. The only way that you get babies, the only way that you perpetuate a society is by men and women getting married and having children. That's how you get society. That is society. That is how society propagates itself. That's how it perpetuates itself. That's the elemental foundation of the society. And in order for that process to happen, for children to be created and for them to be raised and inculcated with the culture and to learn what they need to know for the transmission of knowledge, you need to have marriages, you need to have men, and you need to have women. And by marriage, do not misunderstand what I mean. You need the union of souls between one man and one woman in the church. That's the only way that you get a society. And anything that is opposed to that, anything that tries to confound that or confuse that or obfuscate that is pure evil. And that is the enemy of society.